Right, well, thanks all for coming. Yeah, in terms of the startup manual, look, the reason we put it together was we get stacks and stacks of startups coming to us saying, how do I do this, how do I do that? Ultimately, everyone asked the same questions over and over again. And there was no kind of central source of truth to this sort of stuff. So we tried to put something together that was easy to read, easy to understand for a startup founder, but actually had all the detail you need to get you from incorporation all the way up to kind of seed Series A round. Don't think that what's set out in there is the only way of doing things. Every startup is different. Having said that, when you're raising money and raising capital in particular, there's lots of things that are pretty standard that you kind of need to know about to sound sensible when you're meeting potential investors, and that's what this is designed to do. To kind of get you up to speed, does not replace, obviously, professional advice. So, without further ado, we're going to start this sort of fireside chat with Steve. The idea here is to go through a few questions around investing and pitching. We'll then move on to some more specific legal type questions, and at the end we'll obviously open the floor to questions. So think of questions whilst we go along. Obviously Steve doesn't really need an introduction, so I'm not going to do that. I'm going to get straight into the questions. So look, in terms of investing and pitching, the first one that I want to ask is, you've sort of said that rather than a dodgy idea with an awesome team, you'd rather invest in an awesome idea with a dodgy team. Is that true or not?
Thanks very much for having me tonight. Sorry for my breathing's coming through the microphone here. Did you just start with a disclaimer? You just started with a disclaimer.
We are a law firm. We did start with a disclaimer.
Is that your startup guide? Can I take a look at your startup guide? I didn't know you had one of those things. I'll have to look at that. Any information you get as a startup from a law firm for free is gold. Take it, absorb it, get into it. I love it tonight. I think the audience is fantastic. I'm pissed off it's not 3 times as many, because potentially you're getting free advice from the lawyers tonight. And that's really hard to get usually. From good ones anyway. The good ones charge as they should. What was your question again?
So you've said that rather a dodgy idea with an awesome team than an awesome idea with a dodgy team.
I can't remember saying that, but I do sort of agree with it. So
basically, what traits are you looking for when you're investing in a startup?
Yeah, people.
Is it the idea or is it the team?
It's the team. It's a combination. So if you're to rank stack it, it's a team, but team's a bit of a throwaway line. They've got to be the people you want to work with. They've got to have the appropriate skills for what they want to do. They've got to have the right business mindset. That's very important. If I like a person, I'm not going to want to meet them once a month and talk about their business. I don't care if you're clapping golf balls from your hand. I'm not going to invest in you. You've got to identify a problem. People don't buy ideas. People don't buy solutions. People don't buy ideas. They buy solutions to problems. You need to identify a problem and solve that problem for people. It's very important. And the idea, you have 2 shits about, to be honest, because if you've got a good team and the problem's deep enough, it'll be the 3rd or 4th idea before you crack it anyway. So if you believe the team, you believe they're smart enough to change the idea of attacking that problem as their business plan makes contact with the customer. And inevitably it doesn't work. So that's very important.
Okay, cool. A big one that we see, and you obviously see this as well, is startups, and pretty early stage startups, turning up to meetings with corporate advisors. Sort of pseudo investment bank type advisors that are trying to help them raise money and generally taking a cut of whatever's raised. Can you give some insight into your views on that and how you would deal with a startup who has a corporate advisor?
I actually hate it. I think they're leeches on the community. At a certain stage, corporate advisor makes a lot of sense. I've raised a lot of money over the years in various companies, and we've used a lot of corporate advisors. But when you're raising $90 million for a telco, it's a bit different to raising sort of $1 or $2 million for a startup. How bad are you at selling your message that you need some spiff to help you? Why can't you actually convince someone to come and actually back you, but you need some paid shill beside you to sell that message? Remember when you're actually going out there and seeking investment, I rail against the word give. If someone says, well, you're going to give me money, I say, no, I give money to my kids. I'm actually buying equity from you and you're goddamn selling equity. And if you don't take that attitude to it, then you're in trouble. So if you can't sell equity, right, without some paid shield beside you, how good are you selling your product? It's a forward indicator of problems. So at a certain stage, it makes a lot of sense to access certain deeper equity pools, to have investment bankers there. It makes sense. It always shits you to pay them. Because in essence, they don't do any work. They really are. They really, we've had some good ones, but most of them are pretty crap. And I've been on boards that probably raised close to $500 million in listed companies over the years, so in debt and equity. So I've had a lot of exposure to this. So, how bad are you at selling shit that you need help? If you can't sell your own equity, things you believe in, you believe in this startup, this company, you actually can't sell an ownership share of that without help. It's a forward indicator that you're a pretty poor salesperson.
So what are some other sort of deal killers, things that, if the founder turns up with X, you just
it's weird. So I'm going to take two opposite sizes. So a weird deal killer, we said this in a couple of deals lately, or one deal in particular, is if the founders, the people actually running the business, loving the business, don't have enough equity. The reality is that a real investor knows that they don't run the business. You're actually investing in the founders. You're going to believe their business plan, you believe their vision, you're going to back them. And if they're sitting there after a couple of investment rounds and having raised $1 million and they're probably sitting on 20% to 22 of them, there's nothing left in the game for them. When things get hard, they're probably going to actually look at something else to do. And if you lose those founders, you break the company. So that's so, if the founders don't have enough equity, you're in trouble. The other one is when they've actually kept too much equity. So this is a bit tough, right? So if you've got a business doing okay, going for a year or two, you've got $500,000 a year, otherwise known as $500K ARR or $40K MRR, or that sort of bullshit sort of number you want to actually get term put on there. And you've raised $1 million on a $20 million valuation, or $5 million on a $30 million valuation. You suffer the real risk of a down round in the next time, because you won't make expectations. You found a couple of muppet investors who've overpaid. Yeah, and as a result, you're actually setting yourself up for failure down the track. We got a couple of companies like that. We learned this from very well. We took an investor on and valued the company around about $20 million for fuck all in revenue. And now, because we haven't quite hit expectations, we actually can't get anyone else interested. So you have troubles if you've raised money at too high valuation, you got problems. You raise money at too low valuation. So there's a middle ground in there that actually makes sense. And that's a tough thing to determine. That's a big thing. Where you actually have like an early stage investor who's taking a board seat, adds no value, is there to watch his money. If you have to watch your money, don't invest in the founders. You don't trust them. So board members should add value. That should be the defining feature of a board member. They should add value. If not, piss off, go do something else. So there's lots of things that will kill the deal. Sure. Kill our desire to do a deal.
Just on the board side of things, I mean, obviously you going to say shareholder you can't really say director will be appointed if they add value. You have to have some kind of a percent of the company. So do you have a number that you think is reasonable? You own X amount of the company, you should be entitled to a board seat, or? Well,
there's nothing. There's nothing in the Corporations Act that says you're entitled to it, right? Mm-hmm. So, there's independent director sort of status. I think it's 5% from public company stuff and whatever it might be.
So public companies, but for proprietary.
So no, I mean we often take rights to a board seat. If we put any more than a chunk of cash in for more than 20% of the round, for more than 20% of the company, it's unusual. 20% sort of 20% probably plus or minus, probably 16% probably sort of plus or minus 3 or 4% would be where we normally sit. So if someone's out there looking for $1 million, then we're pretty close to about 5. Mm-hmm. That's about reasonable if you believe in the story. And that's what that's the dilution trail they should be on. We'll often take, where we can get it, we'll take a right to a board seat. Do we want to be on the board of a startup that's probably got an 80% chance of failing? Oh, fuck no, they're bad boards to be on. They're horrible. You've got no good decisions.
Yep.
Everything's a bit chaotic. So we want the rights, but we often we rarely take it, to be honest.
Let's flip to a more kind of legal question on that, given we're sort of talking about how you invest. Do you always invest on a preference share structure, or do you sometimes come in on ordinary shares? Do you have
I love I've waxed and waned on this over the years. I think Avcal and Spark Helmore have done a good job with the Avcal. The Avcal Australian Venture Capital something limited. Australia, we don't know who they are. Avcal, look them up. They've got a reference to the docs, shareholders agreement, subscription agreement.
Yep.
A couple of others from memory, IP.
Yeah.
And
So there's a safe coming out. Yeah.
There's a safe coming out. Yeah, cool. So they're pretty good. They actually protect both parties. To be honest, I actually don't mind them. You know, you can argue the toss, probably not on really material stuff either way.
Yeah.
So there's a bit of wiggle room in there, and I'm pretty sure they predicate investors coming on a preference share.
Yep.
So
They do.
who doesn't know what a preference share is? Oh thank God! Oh my God! And you've got a company too. I spoke to you before. So a preference share is when there's an exit event. People who hold preference shares take a preferential payout of the proceeds of the exit event. So there's participating and non-participating. If people offer you participating, they're probably Brisbane Angels, one like hell. Sorry, I shouldn't say that. You want non-participating for various reasons. Look these terms up. Preference shares, participating preference shares, non-participating preference shares, they're already bought. And honestly, in between non-participating and participating, it speaks towards the investor's intent. Right? There's certain indicators for, I mentioned before, there's certain indicators for how people think and believe. You know, you can look at the way they conduct themselves and understand how they're going to conduct themselves in the future. And when an investor really wants to have these really onerous, shitty terms, it's a forward indicator for their future behaviour. And just, forget them, drop them. So,
just in terms of the startup manual, there's a page in there which goes through a term sheet, which is, I believe, just get to it. It's page 21.
nice.
It's based on a Blackbird Ventures term sheet.
Oh, Sam Wong, yeah, she's good. All right.
And it goes through, basically all this sort of stuff. So it is important to know. One thing to know about the Avcal suite is that those documents were drafted by Dan Acken, who was at Spark Helmore, now at K&L Gates, and on the last round of them, Jill McKnight, my wife, who's also one of our practice leaders at Legal Vision, worked with him to redo the docs, and her kind of mandate was to approach them from a startup's perspective. His mandate was to approach them from a VC's perspective, and so I guess the final documents are something that are considered to be pretty fair to both parties.
And this is good. You guys should read this. If you haven't read it before, you should read it. There's some really good stuff already. So this is you guys, isn't it?
Yep.
Bloody well done.
Yeah.
The big things are, the concept of fully diluted when you actually do an investment. So, because when you negotiate a bullshit valuation over the coffee table, right? Pre-money, post-money, whatever it might be, they might throw out a term like fully diluted, for example. Especially when you get a 20% ESOP.
Yeah.
That's pretty material stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that is basically, if you 100% allocate the ESOPs, if you allocate 20% equity in the company, even after that, if we negotiate 20% of the equity, we're still at 20%. So that's a big thing, right?
100%. A massive, probably the thing that we see the most on a seed or Series A round is your investor will come to you and say, I'm going to invest at a $10 million pre-money valuation. And actually, they're not investing on a $10 million pre-money valuation. They're investing on something like an $8.2 million pre-money valuation because they are saying that valuation includes a 20% or sometimes a 15% ESOP, which hasn't yet been allocated.
But who here's read the company constitution? No, I have. I think great documents. It's 3/4 of a shareholder's agreement, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So,
yeah.
and you actually don't even need a company constitution. You can do the asset default corporation act, which I don't recommend anyone does. It's stupid.
Yeah.
But read your company constitution. It's would take what, 15 minutes maybe? You're a fast reader. 5.
Yeah. To read it and understand it is
Well,
maybe two different things, but
It's absolutely enlightening. It's the ground rules that you can do, and it will actually tell you a lot about a lot of this sort of stuff. So
Sure.
it's a baseline. From start to successful exit, see the insight says it's 8.7 or 8.3 years, 8 point something years. Who gives a shit about the point? Over 8 years. Take 15 minutes to read the goddamn constitution. It's bugger all.
To get back to the question, I think we actually got an answer in terms of ordinary shares versus preference shares. Do you always invest on preference shares or?
Depends. So the valuation and the terms in an investment are set by the market.
Yep.
The hotter a stock,
Yep.
the less opportunity you have to set terms yourself.
Yep.
So we talked about SAFE before, convertible instruments and SAFE. I hate convertibles and SAFE. I think they're gutless.
Mm-hmm.
But if we like the company enough, we'll do them.
Okay. Well, let's get to that question. So I think the question was, what are your thoughts on convertibles and SAFE? So we have the answer there. Do you want to give us?
Well, the gutless because like the entrepreneur values your dollar. They've asked you for X many thousands.
So before we go, is everyone who doesn't know what a SAFE note or a convertible note is?
What pages?
It'll be in there. Tony, can you
distribute some documents? Yeah. So it's convertible debt.
18, page 18 and 19.
Yeah.
We should have made everyone read this before.
Reading. So simple agreement for future equity, SAFE. It's a really bullshit. So I actually heard it called recently in Silicon Valley the SAFE. Like it was a really cool sort of French instrument. It's the SAFE, it's a SAFE note. It's a convertible instrument. All sorts of issues about how much the conversion occurs at, what the discounts, caps, floors, ceilings, other crappy stuff in there. So the reason I don't like convertible instruments for investing is you're not investing technically it's debt for a start.
Convertible note is, but a SAFE note isn't.
Yeah, it sort of isn't, is it? So it sort of is debt, but I agree with the comment on SAFE. So that startup values my dollar. They know they're getting $300,000 from me. They refuse to value their company. That's as rude as it comes. That is actually as rude as it comes. However, it's a market, and if there's a lot of demand for record, remember no one's giving them shit. They're selling stuff, right? And if there's more buyers, if there's more purchases of their equity in the market, and there is equity, then they're in a good position. They can set the rules. So that's when the valuations tend to go up, that's when the terms tend to loosen, and that's when things like SAFEs and convertible notes come in.
Yep.
So the investment market you're in is a sign, so the investment terms you get are a sign of the market, and that's very important. But in general, I don't like them at all. I've got plenty in my portfolio, but I don't like them.
I mean, one way in which they can be used, I think it's a more legitimate way of using them.
So it has this. So I invested $1.1 million in a company recently over the last 3 years, over about 3 rounds, mostly all on SAFEs. When we did finally do a price round, so what triggers a SAFE, what triggers conversion to equity is typically what they call a priced round. There's an equity investment of a certain quanta. We put 1.1 in. By the time it all converted, our equity was worth 1.4. But guess what? That'll be $1 billion exit. I've got no doubt that I've only got like 3.something% of probably $1 billion.
Yeah.
I'm not worried. I think the end results will be worthwhile, but you've got to, like I said, 1.1 in for over about 2.5 years.
Sure. To
be valued up to only 1.4.
Well, that's actually pretty sad. That's where a valuation cap would normally come in to sort of limit that. But obviously, have a read of the manual in detail, because these are the things that genuinely, things like valuation caps on a convertible note, if you're raising using one, make the biggest difference to what you end up with of the company. Percent you end up with of the company is massively dependent on understanding this sort of stuff. Okay, so one thing that we sort of wanted to talk about was employee share option plans. What's your view? Early stage startups, should founders be issuing options to every single team member, or should they be selecting certain team members? What's the best way of doing that in your view?
Yeah, so battled this problem for many years. At my second business, Pipe Networks, we awesome business, but did quite well. It wasn't a tech startup, it was an infrastructure-based Australian company. It was never going to be a global company. We weren't global. To go global, we had to build a $160 million submarine cable between Sydney and Guam in the middle of the GFC, worth 2 hours in its own right. But our traditional telco sales, so we had probably most of the sales guys earned more than the founders in that company, because we had to plan a market for employees, we had to incentivise them on sales. We had a policy where that if you were on a sales incentive plan, you got commissions, you didn't actually participate in the ESOP. We couldn't follow through with that because it once again signed the market. We wanted to actually reward the receptionist with some ESOP shares, not the guys who had a base of 100. This is like 2006, $170,000 on their full, probably on $500,000 a year back then, and they still demanded ESOP. That just ground my gears. We had to do it, otherwise we'd lose the employees. So ESOP is a tool to help you value and gain employees and keep them interested. And there's 100 different opinions on how you do that. I've got no direct answer in that. You plan a market, you use it as a tool. So how do you get an employee? Hopefully you attract them because you've got a really cool company and they love your story and want to come on board. They have to eat. Okay, you got to pay them. Okay, how much do you pay them? What's the market rate for that? And then if there's a market out there as well to get these people and you can't attract them without the shares, then you layer that on top as well. So cool environment, good salary package. Okay, future prospects to the company. So you've got to consider the entire compensation package for an employee, and that starts with the value of their labour and their job, and how much you respect them, and how much they want to turn up to work, how much they'll do for you and not complain about. That's how much they like their job, how cool your company is, right? Then it's wage, then it's probably perks, and then it's probably ESOP on top of that. So there's a strata of things you reward with, of which ESOP's one, and I've got no answer for you on that, other than just colour around the topic.
And I guess the other one is a lot of employees probably don't value or understand what options are, and in that case, maybe you're kind of wasting them, right? Better off using that on people who understand the value, and the people who don't, you maybe pay more or something. I don't know.
Yeah. There's numerous things. I mean, in Australia, we're poorly equipped to do ESOPs anyway. We've just come out of that punitive regime that the idiot Gillard and Rudd thought up. So you can actually issue these things and not penalise people, which is sort of nice. But our Corporations Act, well, I don't know what strata the regulations. You're a lawyer, you probably know better than I do. But when you get a chance, have a read of the Google annual report sometime, right? And just turn to the back. Annual reports are good. You turn to the notes. If you're a lawyer or an accountant, you always turn to the notes for the financial statements, right? There's some of the juicy shit's always in the notes, not the colourful shit at the front that's meant to distract you. That's the hey, look, a bunny rabbit. Go to the stuff at the back. And it turns out that Larry, Sergey, and Eric Schmitz. So I went for a job interview at Google, and so my research on the plane on the way over was to read their annual report. Larry, Sergey, and Eric's shares had 9 times the voting power of any other shareholder. So they could issue a shit ton of shares out and not lose control. We can't do that in Australia. So it's not as powerful as it in the US, where they can issue a lot of downstream financial capacity to their employees and other stakeholders and not lose as much control.
Yep.
So that makes it a bit trickier, to be honest. So it's not as powerful as I suppose the Silicon Valley image of it is. So yeah.
Okay, cool. To go back to sort of investment, I guess as a general topic, and we talk a lot about raising capital. How do you raise money? How do you go about it, so on and so forth. Do you think Australian startups, or just startups in general, are too focused on raising money rather than, frankly, generating revenue?
Yeah, look, the easiest money you'll ever raise is from the customer. That's the easiest cash you'll ever get. It's the most honest cash you'll ever get. It's the less distracting cash. So you spend all this time going out there and talking to investors and raising money. When you've done that, you've still got to talk to a customer and sell shit. You don't evade that part. So there's an awesome company here in Brisbane called Tanda. They've got 100 staff now. I haven't taken a single dollar from an investor. I've been trying to ram it down their throats. They won't take it from me. It's a real shame. So Atlassian's first capital raise was actually a secondary sale. The founders actually sold down. There was no fresh capital.
Yeah.
You can build a company that actually was reliant on customers. Like my first 2 businesses were exactly that. We didn't raise money until. This is why when I get pissed off with startup valuations. So we started the company, Pipe Networks. We started that company in 2001. We had our first capital raise in November 2004. We raised $500,000 on a $5 million value, 10% of the company, $500,000. We were forecasting to have $890,000 net profit after tax on $3 million in revenue. Net profit after tax, after we paid the tax man, right? We fucked up. We had $1.4 million the following June, right? So people come to me and sort of say they've got no revenue. They think they're worth $6 million. Fuck, I scratch my head. So
yeah, it's a hard one.
It is. So sign of the market once again. Yes, we are too focused on raising money. When you prove what your business can do and how you can actually deploy funds properly, raising money is a good idea to go a lot faster.
Yeah.
So it's an acceleration mechanism. I see a lot of startups who raise their family, friends, and raise a seed round. They call it a seed round. They might raise might raise $200,000, and then they'll go out. They've made no progress. They've gone from $10,000 in revenue to $40,000 in revenue. The next round they'll go out and they'll try and raise $1 million. They call it a Series A. You don't actually get what Series A isn't about a quantum of money, or you go seed A, B, C. It's not it. It's about when you actually reach a certain stage and you prove a certain market validation, and you go for a certain quantum. So there's a lot of unsophisticated approaches to an understanding of capital.
So do you think we're in a startup early stage bubble now, or not?
I don't have enough information to say that.
Well, based on the valuations you're seeing out there, I guess it's always an indication, right?
You can ask valuations, when you get is another story.
Right.
I've had probably over the years, I've had 20 people come and pitch me, 20, maybe 30 businesses come and pitch me, and I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to do that. And literally, I've had lots of businesses come and pitch me, and I say no to, but there's about 30 that have basically said, I'm wrong, and they've called me a name, that was probably using a 4-letter name at the same time. I'm going to go to Silicon Valley and raise money where the streets are paved with gold. And uniform, they've gone there and raised no money. But they pivoted so massively, the companies look nothing like they did at all after many years. So am I getting it wrong? No, I'm not getting it wrong. If they can't raise the money here, they can't raise the money there, guess what? They've got a piece of shit business. Yeah. But there's a your baby's ugly argument here. If you've got all the investors and they've said no, they're not wrong. You are selling shit and the customer's saying, yeah, I don't want to buy it. And you're saying, oh my God, the customer's wrong. Yeah. But you have forgotten what you're doing here. You are selling stuff to people and they're refusing to buy it. You are actually wrong, your baby's ugly.
Founders, a lot of founders here. What should founders be looking for? Let's assume they have a choice of investors. Not always the case. In fact, probably not usually the case. But if they do, what should they be looking for in an investor?
What the company recently had, the local one of my investments raised 13 mil. I haven't spoken about the press yet. It's really annoying. We had 8 investors to pick from. Right. If you're winning, you win. Yeah, you can. If you're actually on the, these guys are doing, what can I say? They did exceptionally well. They raised 13 mil on a beautiful number, and they had around about 4 mil in annual revenue, to give you some idea, right? So, no, if you're good, you can raise it.
So how did they choose which of those investors to go with? I mean, what was the...
it was a big process. So we had a look at what they were offering. There was a valuation. Did we take the best valuation? We might have had the best valuation.
That's always a...
There was corporate, so there was a bunch of investors involved. There was people who were very aggressive, and I researched your investors. We got some term sheets, and we had some phone calls with people who, when we told them that they were out of the race, threatened to sue us to put them into the race. You imagine that as an investor on your own. These guys aren't here because they threatened to sue us. Sorry, they said, if you refuse our investment, you would do us substantial damage. You know that code for, right?
Yeah.
This is a threat to sue, right? And we basically go your hardest because we're with this when these guys have raised a lot of money and we're one of maybe the top 3 or 4 VC firms in Australia. disgraceful behaviour. So ring around, ask about investors, who's invested in what, who's good investors, what do they invest in, why do they invest. That's all very important. So we looked at items like that. So the founders, not we, on the board mind you, but the founders did a shit ton of research, and they came up with the best short set. In the end, we had to exclude some amazing investors. And I recently shared a 747 flight back from San Francisco, one we excluded, and I didn't fucking stop hearing about it the whole time. So if your equity is very desirable, if your company is very investable, you'll get a lot of investors.
Yep.
If you don't, it's customers don't want to purchase. Why is that? The customers aren't actually wrong. So, yeah. And if you think you can get a better deal elsewhere, go elsewhere. Please, tell us how you go.
Yeah. So, you're out there raising, you might have a few potential investors interested, and you get to the stage where those investors are wanting to do some due diligence on your startup. That can be costly, it can be...
It can be if you don't prepare for it.
Right.
Is DD covered in here?
Well, hopefully, is it? Where's Tony? Is it covered? Yeah, I'm sure it is, yeah.
So due diligence is just a smart investor proving they're smart. I was in the press today, sort of reporting that my annual bill to DD Shark Tank company is $300,000.
Yep.
My annual bill to run the investment side of business is $740,000. I allocate about $300,000 to Shark Tank companies in my head, and people thought that was amazing. It's like, well, that's just the cost of doing business, right? So we treat our capital as pretty sacred. We make sure we do the right thing. We ask questions like, do you run an accounting system other than Excel or a shoebox? It's shocking how many shoeboxes are out there. So we go through we actually go through very practical DD.
So what is that in practice? So you've got some sort of financial DD, which is...
Very much so. So there's a standard set of questions, intellectual property, employee agreements, major contracts, top ex-customers, which in the startups is all customers, to be honest.
Yep.
We try and get access to their Xero account when they have actually any accounting system at all. We look at we did look at the founders. We looked at stuff from the founders to stop that. It felt a bit icky, to be honest. So we don't do all that digging in the founders. Yeah. So, but when we invest, what we do is we actually invest in so the people, the problem, the people, the skills, the problem, and then the idea. But what the biggest thing we invest in is that we go the stories. Like, wow, we think that there's a problem with. We actually think that cancer, awesome one local company, Maxwell MRI. We think cancer sucks. Well, I agree with that. Cancer does suck. We think it's a big problem. We know it's a big problem. We're going to solve this by basically putting. We have an AI-driven system that can put the person in an MRI machine twice a year, and after like 4 or 5 scans, it can predict when you're going to get cancer and the right thing to do that. And this is how we're going to do it. And we just bought that business plan and we invested in that. Look at other businesses out there where the guys have that much opportunity. They want us to tell them the business plan in their business space. And one of them I got is actually, you'll see this in episode 8 on Shark Tank. Episode 3's tonight, episode 8 on 2's tonight. Anyway, these guys have a cruising business in Croatia on the Dalmatian coast. Beautiful. Guys just just one boat makes a shit ton of cash. We're going awesome business opportunity, might get 2, 3, 4 boats, make more cash, let's go to the Caribbean, let's go to the Greek Islands. And that was our plan, and then he's going hey, cool, tell me what I've got to do. I said, well, I'm going to back you, what's your plan? And he goes, well, didn't you have a plan for the Greek Islands? I said, well, does that make sense? Like, dude, we're not cruise operators. So what we do is we buy your vision. You infect us and we feel we're missing out, we're going to come in behind you and we're just going to say, right, I'm going to back your cash. Excuse me. I'm going to, we'll bring contacts, a whole bunch of things, but do we, if we think we're the experts at this, we're just going to do it without you. We're investing in because we think you're the expert. And so we've got to buy that vision.
Yep.
So that's a big thing as well.
And so you get your financial DD and then obviously your sort of legal DD. What are you mainly looking at? Sort of IP, employment contracts, that sort of stuff?
Very few things tripped up in legal DD, I want to say.
Yeah.
But yeah, everything you said, employment contracts, IP, we had one, these guys. So they even came out and so there's been a bit of press lately about how few deals in Shark Tank passed ED. One of the companies I agreed to do an investment on didn't pass ED. One of the reasons was his staff were stealing his recipes for shit, right, and a whole bunch of other stuff, and they were suing each other. But that makes you want to invest, right?
Yeah.
You know, it's a big red flag when everyone's fucking suing each other, gunning each other's fucking heads in 10 places.
Yeah.
But he came out in the press and spanked me from investing. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, thanks very much, dickhead. But that's probably the worst percent of legal stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it is intellectual, typically legal is intellectual property related issues, so
Yep.
it's a big one.
Okay. So a big one when you're dealing with angel investors is ESIC status.
Yeah, nice.
Does everyone know what ESIC status is or not? No? Do you want to quickly explain what it is? And
Yeah, cool. Malcolm Turnbull's NISA plan, National Innovation Science something plan. One of the platforms there, but one of the better parts of that platform was a 20% tax offset to certain investors if your company met certain criteria. The criteria was the fact you were an ESIC, early stage innovation company, typically less than 3 years old, typically less than $2 million in expenses and $300,000 in revenue, I want to say.
about that, yeah.
You had to look and smell like a tech startup. You had to have an idea or a piece of IP with some global appeal that could scale well, which is the definition of a tech startup.
Mm-hmm.
And your investors could get, if they invested $1 million, would get an instant $200,000 back from the. It was an offset.
Offset.
So it was an offset. So you get $200,000 as a check back from the ATO that you can only spend the ATO effectively, right?
Yeah.
So ESIC is very important. It's a great program. I think personally it should be increased. And if you were at the Policy Hack last week, I was on the ESIC team. I think personally it should be increased to 5 years. I was on the definition of a startup team. I said the definition of startup is in the ESIC.
Mm-hmm.
But we should increase it to 5 years, probably 4 mil, and we should basically bump the boundaries up.
Yeah.
The ESIC is a brilliant piece of government policy. But not only that, you also get the offset, you also get CGT free, I want to say, and a whole bunch of other shit at the same time.
Yeah,
So it's a really, really good
sale,
platform.
yeah, the sale of your shares,
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know about you, but we don't see a lot of startups who do qualify actually kind of thinking about this and saying to potential investors, hey, you should be thinking about it. Is that something that people should be more focused on when they're raising? Yeah.
Why not?
I think a lot of people don't know about it, to be fair.
That's amazing, isn't it? But it's dumb. Look at ESIC. It's just great. I mean, okay, it's less than 3 years. I think 5 is good. It is called early stage. In the same policy hack, I fought a guy who said that you should be less than 10 years. I said, you're not fucking early stage after 10 years. You're basically failed after 10 years. So,
it's definitely something that if you've got an angel investor who kind of knows what they're doing, they're going to want to know that you as a business will qualify.
Yeah, but also there's like an ATO website you go to, and you fill out this little questionnaire, and it goes, yes, you're an ESIC, and you fucking print that page and you give it to the investor, and you go, look, you get 20% back.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just, but then people sort of say, well, you're making your own value decisions. Are you, is your technology globally scalable? Dude, you got a customer outside of Australia? Yep. Fucking globally scalable. I mean, it's so, just get pragmatic.
Yeah.
I mean, in Australia, we're way too, it's almost like you want the corner cases to come true. We've just got to get out there and actually take advantage of this stuff, because it's a brilliant plan.
Agreed. Big one, when you're investing, you talk about wanting to see traction. Everyone, it's not unique, but it's certainly something that you talk about quite a bit. What is that? What does that actually mean in practice to you? Is it
Profit.
revenue?
I want to see profit.
Some profit.
I want to see profit. I rarely see profit. So there I want to see revenue. I rarely see revenue. So there I want to see traction. So great business here, Clip Champ. Anyone from Clip Champ here at all? No, Clip Champ's an awesome business. Clip Champ, there's a hand there. These guys have revenue, but these guys are doing 80,000 users a week are signing up. They're not paying the money. They're users. They're users of the site. That's traction. 80,000 users a week. When we got some investors on that roster who want them to slow down and get revenue, like fuck that. How often do you get close to a business signing up 80,000 people a week? No. Let's just ride this puppy for all it's worth.
Yep.
So at the very base, people using it, enjoying it.
Yep.
Because if you get 80,000 a week, you work out how to make money from that. The next best is revenue.
Yep.
The best traction you get is profit.
Yep.
If
If you're generating a whole stack of heap of profit, you might not be necessarily looking for investors, right? So.
Or you're a very investable thing, right? In which case, it's a good
Valuation.
It's a good place to go.
To the roof, yeah. Okay. So, just in terms of dealing with lawyers, I guess, always an exciting part of the founder's
Always the best part of my day.
As a sort of founder, when, in your view, should you start to engage with a lawyer or a law firm?
The other thing about the law, it's just like reading your constitution. It's actually really simple. There's shitty case law and stuff and corner cases, but for the most part, the gist of it is really easy. I can quite proudly say from 2001 to about 2006, I was the best telco lawyer in Australia. I could murder QCs of this stuff because I actually fucking read the Telco Act. And up until they started fucking around with NBN, it was actually very easy to read, to be quite honest, and they just started putting in all this sort of exceptions and shit. So, the corps ain't that bad. So, don't be scared by the law. At some point in time, you need to get a professional on board because, there's some stuff that's really fucking important you shouldn't bugger eyes around with. So, start with the basics. You're in business, pull out your constitution, have a read of it. It's not that thick. It shouldn't be if it is, you're in trouble. The only parts of contracts I hated were the back end, the boilerplate shit at the back. You get the last sort of 3 or 4 pages and they talk about liability and fucking indemnities and that's the stuff I handle. Everything else, the operative parts of the contract are easy. Understand them though, understand the interplay. Bring the lawyers in for the stuff because I still struggle with indemnities and liabilities and this and that, and they can be quite complex to be honest.
Yep.
So lawyers are very valuable there. I would say, don't be afraid to ask the lawyer for a quote and stick them to it. So, sorry mate, I was your panel.
No.
When we floated Pipe Networks in 2005, there hadn't been a float in Brisbane outside of a set few law firms for a while. We actually tapped Minter Ellison because they came to us with a $50,000 fixed price quote for legal DD for our IPO. Everyone else, fixed price. Right, there you go. This is back. Well, this is in 05, right? Oh, we started in 04. Yeah, November 04 we started, and everyone else is like probably 150 plus, but Minter just wanted to buy the business. Yeah, well, fuck, let me buy the business, it's fine. They got halfway through and said, look, I'm sorry, we can't do it, this is too cheap, we're going to have to give you variation. We just held up the fucking engagement letter. If you've ever done an IPO, the due diligence meetings you have about, about a dozen DD meetings, they're painful as shit, they're horrible. We were halfway through those, they were going for 3 or 4 hours at a time, and after we refused to pay them money, those meetings went for 25 minutes. Amazingly successful IPO. You can hold every professional, from the plumber to the accountant, to the lawyer, to a fixed price quote. Get a fucking quote. Be honest in what you want done, because providing you're honest in what you want and they're honest in what they respond to, it's trade practices. You can hold them to that, right?
Oh, 100%.
So
85% of the work we do, we on a fixed
price.
basis.
Yeah, and the best lawyers will do that. We use McCulloch's, to be honest. So McCulloch's aren't renowned for being a cheap service law firm, in that respect. And I don't know the Strata. I know they're probably one of the better ones in Brisbane, to be honest. But we still go out there, and even my staff. I'm a bit of a Nazi in my place. If you outside your budget, if you actually get a quote, if you actually get to approve something, I get to approve the expenditure. It's on an email. Hey, had a quote from Alex for this. Advice on this. They say it's going to be between 2.5 and 3.2, and I'll go yes or no. I'll answer always inside of 10 minutes. But get the goddamn quote. If it's outside of that, we won't pay it. Sorry, I shouldn't say. Without reason. If we varied it, for example, that's fair enough. But we just won't pay it because you quoted it. I'm sorry, that's certainly. So lawyers are important. Put them on a fixed price. Be honest with your description of the job when you actually have a really good relationship.
And frankly, just on that, I mean, the more you know about what you're doing, i.e. you've read this startup manual, it's obvious to a lawyer that you're going to be an easier customer to deal with. If they're going to have to explain to you every single term in something like a shareholders agreement, it's going to take a very long time. So you can either pay a lawyer to do it, or you can educate yourself.
And you should do that. I mean, honestly, I rail against founders being dumb on a couple of things, or one thing in particular, typically accounting. If you sit there and goes, well, I'm a technical guy, I'm the CEO, founder, I'm a technical guy, so therefore I don't know numbers. It's like, you'll go broke. You know, if you've signed a contract with someone you don't know the terms of, you'll go broke. You can't be dumb on some stuff. For as much as I like doing it, get over it. Fucking just swallow it. Get over it, understand it, and do it. You want to do that, get out of business. You don't deserve to be in business.
Last sort of question before we move on to questions from everyone here. Exiting, not something that most startups get to be frank, or they exit in some form or another, I guess. But in terms of a successful exit, how do you sort of plan that? Do you have any advice for founders about how to go about that, how to think about it, and how to kind of get to the stage where you have actually exited?
Yeah, I think that the best exits come from a position of strength. So I had two businesses that I was involved with. The first one I got out of because I was shit scared Telco were going to crush us. So I got out of fear. Did quite well, don't get me wrong. The second one, we were listed, we got taken out of the market. That's part of the benefits and the problems of being on the market, I suppose. Did we plan for that exit? No, we didn't. So for the plot of history, we listed the company in May 2005 at 40 cents. Pre-IPO capital raising 25 cents. The plan was listed 50, got knocked back by shitbag brokers to 40 cents. 3 weeks later, we had a $1 party. So that would have been in mid 05. In mid 07, we were $4.80. In January 8, we were $1.80. GFC. Here's a hint. If you know the GFC is 6 months away, don't spend $100 million building a submarine cable at Guam. It's really, really shit. March 2010, we sold the company for $6.30. So 40 cents, buck, 4.80, $1.80, $6.30. That's why I'm great. So, didn't plan for that. You couldn't plan for that. If anyone remembers the GFC, it was the most surreal shit was going on. But yes, okay, you should plan for it. You should have a goal. Sorry, you should have a goal in mind. So why are you doing this? I personally hope that if you're in a business, it's a business. If you're in charity, it's a charity. I've got a charity, it's up there, it's Lucy Labs, right? If you're in a business, it's there to make money. Don't confuse your vision. You either make money or you're a charity. You can't do both. If you try and do both will fail. One's really bad. Get stinking rich first and then follow your charities. So you're out there to make money. That's simple. So how do you do that? You can do that from a point of having a continually strong business. But a really strong business is worth a lot more in an upcycle to someone who'll overpay, which is what we found ourselves in at the time. So you can make a massive capital gain from that business, and I recommend you seize an opportunity. Take money off the table. It's so important. You can let your fortune ride off a cliff, and don't do that. You take the cash off the table, reset, take a holiday, pay your house off, get back into them again. So yes, plan for an exit. That's very important. Know what you want. It's rarely your first business will be your dynasty. Make your money, set where you are, and continue on. I think it's very important.
We'll move to questions. Just an observation beforehand, which I found interesting though, is so many startup founders think that an IPO is an exit, and the way you just talked about being listed there was very clear that wasn't an exit at all, right? And that's something worth bearing in mind. I think that an IPO is not an exit; it's just another financing event.
Well, it is in a shareholder agreement, right? So, which is weird. No, it's not. Well, that's an Australian thing. So it's more an artefact of the Australian Stock Exchange, sorry, Australian Security Exchange. So we have a very cheap board to list on, very easy board to list on. I think it's an amazing place to raise capital for a venture. You then have the secondary sales issue. You're then exposed to continuous disclosure and a bunch of other stuff. So it's a path to an exit, that's for sure. It's rarely an exit in Australia, though.
Okay, let's move to questions.